So, yeah, Jaden and me are going to talk to you a little bit about our experiences in the field hacking power generation infrastructure. All right. So, these are first hand experiences. This is our job. We perform technical security audits on critical information infrastructure. So, a little bit about me. My name is Karan. I'm a computer hacker, entrepreneur, specializing in power, energy, maritime, and a whole lot of other stuff. I've worked with various private, public sectors, law enforcement, government, a whole lot of different things. Jaden, my colleague, we basically secure important stuff together. So I'm going to just breeze through the slides because we delayed you quite a bit. So what are we going to do today? We're going to talk about our live, auditing live power generation on-site remote. We're going to talk to you about some novel attack vectors and kill chains that we've seen in the wild. And we're going to, for those of you out here, I know there might be some of you who actually are responsible for securing this sort of infrastructure. We're going to give you pointers on a few things to do / avoid. So we're going to talk to you about this in the form of a road trip. So we were contracted to, go ahead and look at a bunch of power plants around India sometime back. And usually power infrastructure is, kept away from cities for obvious reasons. And it was not working out for us to fly. So, we decided everyone just get in the car and we're going to drive. We're going to drive 5,000 kilometers hacking power plants. And, my business partner was like, have you lost your mind? You are not doing this. Please take flights. And I said, no, this is the right way to do it. We're going to, load up the best of us in the car and we're going to drive and we're going to do this. So, that's what we did. That's literally like a 5,000 kilometer circle around India, driving through pretty large infrastructures. We're talking gigawatts of solar. So you can imagine the scale of these things. Some of these sites might have over 10,000 assets, and very, very complex networks. Slide, please. Yeah, so, we're going to talk to you about our experience as a group going out. That's, us out there in the control centers, the main control rooms. We'll talk to you a little bit about what a main control room is, what a switchyard is, for those of you who are not familiar with, power. So this is what it was: 1 car, 4 hackers, 12 days, 7 states, a lot of infrastructure. So, being hackers, as we drove across these 5,000 kilometers, we kept our radios on. We war drove across the whole country, picking up every beacon, every Wi-Fi frame, every Bluetooth, every GSM tower, profiled all the crypto suites. And, this is all completely legal. These are beacons broadcasted by various infrastructures to say, hey, I exist, and these are my crypto suites. But we did a lot of analysis on it later, which helped us understand. But that's a bit out of scope. The rules of the road were, you either hack or you drive, So, yeah, we were just exchanging the steering wheel, and everyone else, the 3 of us, were on our laptops, because there was a lot of stuff to go through. This was our gear, which, by the way, I carried most of for the radio hacking village. And, airport security was funny. Have you seen the Matrix scene where they ask Keanu Reeves, can you show us any metallic objects? And he opens his coat and it's just, yeah, it was like that. The airport guy was like, holy shit, what the and I was like, wait, I can explain this? He's like, no, you can't. Why the hell are you taking all this in your hand baggage, So I'm like, I work in IT, and he was just like, no, that is not the right answer. But anyway, I'm here, I'm not in jail, so it's all good. But, this is what we had. We had a bunch of radios, we had our, serial converters, because a lot of stuff on power plants still runs on serial. Yeah, a whole lot of equipment. So, I'm going to talk to you about a couple of things today, to keep things short and sweet. One is a complete kill chain, okay? An ICS cyber kill chain. that we executed end to end over the internet, over the public internet, on shutting down a power plant. All right. Now we were contracted to do this, so all perfectly legal. This actually has a 0 day in it, which yeah, is may or may not still be live. So take it easy, guys. No, I'm just kidding. It's been disclosed, and you're just pulling your leg. So we're going to talk about this in a little bit of technical detail, but not dive too far into it. I want to highlight certain things that I hear very often when working with critical infrastructure. You know, people say these things over and over again to me, you know, we're air-gapped, the application is read-only, and a whole lot of things. And I want to touch on why it's bad and how this stuff can go bad. So slide, please, yeah. So this started out with a recon, you know, port scanning, public IPs, found a lot of stuff open. And we found a couple of ports that maybe should not have been open on a perimeter device on a plant, okay? So this was being done remotely. Standard stuff, you know, when you find a port open, you start scanning it with a number of things, DIRbuster. Basically, it's just brute forcing directories on a web server. And turned up directory listing was on, all right? Yeah. And what that allowed us to do was to browse certain files on this web server. Now it turned out that the SCADA vendor had written a custom application for a bunch of sites, and they had not set this up correctly. So exploring a bit more, we ended up finding a JSON there with, you know, certain passwords to, you know, fields of a database. Now, what was that database password? But you know, out here, I'm going to stop, okay? Because when you're hacking OT, when you're trying to pen test OT, you need to understand the physical process. So I'm going to give this over to Jaden, who's going to talk to you a little bit about how a solar power plant works. Okay, we're going to talk about the physical and you know, electric processes. So,
right. Thank you, Karan. Hey guys. So yeah, we've come to the part where we've got the data.json file, which contains a bunch of interesting things. Something which we kind of need a bit of context on is these things called blocks. Now, if you visit a power plant, or if you actually ever see any solar installation in like a house or on top of a rooftop, you'll have usually a collection of arrays. So you've got your individual cell, well, when you shine light upon it, or either in the form of solar rays or like any form of UV radiation, it converts that energy into electric energy. Now, you combine a bunch of those, you've got a solar module. You combine a bunch of solar modules, you've got an individual panel. And when you combine a bunch of panels, you've got an individual array of well, photovoltaic cells. Now, a block is a collection of these multiple arrays. Now, yeah. Now, in a solar plant, when you've got like, I want to say like thousands and thousands of these, so some of the ones we went to had like 30, 40,000 of them, it's pretty impossible to like sit and manually automate and manage the power which is being generated from these devices. And it's super important that we understand that you actually automate this process, because let's just say you're in a gigawatt plant. It's not necessary that you're going to be generating a gigawatt every day. There's a good chance, like solar plants, they depend upon the weather. So if it's cloudy or if there's rain which is forecasted, the plant operator needs to inform either the state government or the local government in India that, okay, we are predicting we'll be able to generate this much capacity. And therefore, the plant, the government will like accordingly allocate, like, okay, these guys are going to generate this much capacity. We know we need, this is the demand, and therefore they can offset the demand versus production. So to automate that process, this is typically what a block control unit looks like. You've got a PLC, which I've pointed an arrow to. You've got a bunch of other devices which are used for communicating with IEDs. Or if you don't know what an IED is an intelligent edge device. The devices use different protocols. So depending upon whether it's a substation or whether it's the actual power plant, it might use IEC 61850 protocol suite. That in turn contains like 3 different protocols. There's MMS, Goose, SNV. I won't go into much detail about all of those, but effectively you've got those devices. Yeah. Now the thing about power plants, especially when they are solar plants, is that solar is essentially direct current. It's DC, but you can't. DC is not efficient for transmitting it over like large distances, so you have to convert it to AC. So we've got what's an ACCB. So when you convert, when you generate the current from your photovoltaic cell, it comes out in the form of DC. You combine multiple of these blocks into a single output through something called as a string combiner. You then have inverter, multiple inverters. Yeah, I think this is probably the best block diagram. You've got multiple arrays. Multiple arrays form a block. Multiple blocks, they feed a string inverter. A string inverter will combine all the inputs, which are DC. The output will be an AC current. The ACCB is the AC combiner box. It will combine all of these multiple AC currents into a single AC output. They then get fed to a step-up transformer. So usually it will be around 66. I think it's around 66 volt. It gets then stepped up to 33 kilovolt. Finally, before it can be fed to the grid, it gets stepped up to 132 kilovolts. Now in between, we've not highlighted a number of different. You've got basically circuit breakers. Now, circuit breakers are super important, especially for power plants. If you need to do maintenance, if you need, there are certain cases where there's an overcurrent or a short circuit which might take place. People can die because there might be something called as arcing, where because of the current potential, the difference in potential between the charge and the ground, a current might jump. And it's extremely dangerous for maintenance personnel who are operating the power plant because they could get struck by that. So usually to protect them and of course to prevent the over voltage, we've got vacuum circuit breakers and SF6 circuit breakers. SF6 is a gas, sulfur hexafluoride, and that is used to prevent arcing. Continue. And yeah, so if we just put everything which I said into context, you've got your PV panels which are here. String inverters convert DC to AC. You then have got your AC switch, which determines whether the power actually goes from the generation to your substations and then finally to the grid. And you've got your SCADA, which is used for monitoring all of these different equipments. And yeah, I'll hand it back to Karan for the kill chain.
All right, so now most of you know how this stuff works. So if you want to break stuff, or if you want to, pen test or look at the risk from a technical perspective, you need to understand the process, right? Because if someone can pawn a web application, cool, I've popped a shell on a web application box. Is that a big risk? No, it isn't. Okay, because the whole paradigm of security, confidentiality, integrity, availability, it flips around when you talk about OT, right? You don't care about confidentiality and integrity so much. You need, the first thing is safety. Okay, then the second thing is availability. And then come, confidentiality, integrity. So it's not a big deal if you compromise an application. So to really cause impact on an OT system, you need to think of compromising safety and availability. In this context, availability would be availability of power. How would you shut it off? So, we managed to, from that data.json file with the hard-coded credential, logged into phpMyAdmin, looked at the database, found a hashed password for the application that was running, cracked the hash. We've got a lot of GPUs in the house. All that ML stuff finally comes to good use when we run Hashcat. We sort of got access to this application, all right? And they were like, hey, this is just a read-only application. We don't care about it. Nothing can go wrong. But in this application, I found a feature to export as PDF, export as Excel. Funny thing about web applications that do this, there's usually a significant amount of file system operations that happen, right? To generate a PDF, you're first generating either an HTML or an Excel or whatever, then converting it to a PDF. There are a lot of known RC exploits in a number of those libraries across a number of stacks, be it .NET or Python or so on and so forth. However, we realized that there's something even worse happening here in the way that this was exporting data into an Excel format. we figured that environment variables were being passed very wrongly to the file system. And we basically found a RCE. This was an ODE. Okay, it was not known. This application was in use pretty publicly. Not publicly, it's pretty widely in use. But yeah, we figured out that there was a way we could manipulate the post parameter to mess with how the environment variables were passed. And long story short, we got a web shell. All right. Later, we extracted the application code. It looked like this. This is not how you pass environment variables in PHP. You don't execute a shell command. There are safe functions to do it. So this was the main mistake, but we got access to it. And now we obviously wanted to now from here get on in and go and do something that actually causes impact, you know. So we obviously got a stronger shell. We did the whole setup infrastructure. We set up a box in the cloud. We crafted our payloads, our malware, pulled it down, connected back to command control, and then just started browsing the file system. And right enough, there was password reuse between DB credentials and an administrative account, which was in the sudoers group. And boom, next thing you know, you've popped root on the box. Now, you have root on a SCADA server in a power plant. It's not a bad place to be, but you still cannot really do too much, you know. So you want to start spreading around the environment. And how do you do that? Old school, you know, look at the known hosts file. In older versions of Linux, the SSH known hosts was clear text. Newer ones have it hashed, so you know obviously you can't see where the guy's been logging into. A lot of mistakes, you know, private keys in the .ssh directory of an administrative user. But you want to go and manipulate the control process now, you know, to actually impact. So comes back to what Jaden was talking about earlier. If you want to stop the availability of this, what do you get to do? You got to shut down the generation. So you want to cut stuff like the inverters, the vacuum circuit breakers, all of this stuff. Now, all of this is controlled by those PLCs, which he showed you earlier. So a lot of times when vendors set up these devices, these PLCs, they sort of harden one interface, but they mostly leave a lot of other interfaces open, you know. And it's clearly mentioned in the manual, while operating, please turn off, you know, blah, blah, blah. For example, the web interface, the telnet interface, turn it all off and only keep, for example, the Modbus interface open for the, you know, the mission critical processes. But very rarely in the wild do we find this to be done. So long story short, we were able to get access to those PLCs, which open those vacuum circuit breakers. Now you open a vacuum circuit breaker, you've put a hard physical stop to the current flow. But we went a step further. We were like, okay, how do we make this really bad? Because if I open a circuit breaker, what's going to happen? Someone's going to get pissed off and close it. So, you know, how do you make this an irrecoverable attack? So when you want to do this on a system and make it impossible to recover, you need to look at multiple attack vectors. We started sniffing around on the network, looked at the ARP tables on multiple machines, figured out where everything was. Finally, we knew the network, I think, better than the SI who set it up, you know, because we sort of went in and figured everything out. We sniffed enough network traffic to come across a Node.js app that was, you know, sending Modbus signals to the inverters, and literally found the inverter on and inverter off codes. And from there, you know, we knew for sure we could switch the inverters off. Good thing about a solar plant is you can play around with it at night because you're not impacting anything then, right? So, of course, you need a very trusting client to do all this. With most, you know, people are a bit dicey about letting people loose on their networks in this manner. But you know, we've done this before. We do this a lot, so we know how not to crash these things. So this was 1. Opening the vacuum circuit breakers was 2. 3. There was Modbus to TCP converters in each of those blocks that were actually responsible for getting the traffic back to the SCADA. Those could easily be taken out. You know, they had a lot of known issues with them where you could just crash it and it would stop working. There was unsecure, you know, remote access to a core switch. Okay, so these are all the different vectors which are part of an extended kill chain that we've not really included here. So imagine this, you're sitting in the power plant, it's generating, suddenly, boom, your inverters go off, your vacuum circuit breakers open, your Modbus TCP converters get nuked and your core switches go blank. How long do you think that is going to take to recover? You know, impossible. You call the SI is going to be clueless. They're going to call the OEM vendor is going to come back and be like, what the hell did you guys do? You know, very, very difficult. So in this manner, yeah, this was actually a kill chain that we executed, obviously up unto the point of actually running that script during day, because you know our job was to secure it. And we regularly do this, go in and implement, you know, close off all these gaps. So another interesting thing we saw across a lot of these sites, you know, they're remote. The internet access is often by 5G, and you know, with 5G, the telecom providers and ISPs are connecting. They're allowing more access than they should into their internal networks. So we actually found a scenario where we were routable to stuff inside the ISP's network, and other tenants of the ISP could route traffic into this network. Very odd situations, but you know, these vectors do exist, and normally when we set up our perimeter device, you don't always take into account that, hey, there could be some traffic from an internal IP of the ISP of another tenant, you know, coming in or going out. But this was a scenario that we found, which I had never seen before. So coming to the point, how safe is your ICS? Truth is, without a technical audit, you don't really know, okay? There's no way to discern all of these things which I just showed you or which I spoke to you of without actually having someone who knows their stuff come in, plug into your network and take a shot at it. Because from my experience, whatever we see in the SI's network diagrams, you know, whatever we see in the vendor OEM documentation, how it should be configured, is very far from the reality. You know, once you go on site and start mapping the network out and shooting packets across, you'll realize there's a lot of different stuff. There's shadow IT that you never knew existed. There are subnet ranges that are not documented. And most people live in this reality that is just on paper. You know, it's not real. So I want to stress how important it is for, you know, I would say owners or people managing these systems, or whoever gets to take the decision, to call in skilled security practitioners and have them look at their network, you know, preferably before the bad guys do, because they're going to do it. You know, no matter how air-gapped it is or how secure you think you are, always get it validated and rinse and repeat. You know, keep this process happening. That's it. I want to keep the floor open for questions because you know, interaction is always good. So we just wanted to keep it short and sweet, highlight some of the risks that we firsthand experience, and throw the floor open for questions. In this scenario, we broke in via the public internet. In many scenarios, you know, I've personally broken into power plants from the vicinity, you know, stood outside with all of that crazy radio equipment you saw. We have the radio hacking village next door. There are ways to, you know, get into wireless networks. So a lot of these plants, especially solar, it's not practical to run cable or copper for long distances, okay? You've got a gigawatt of power. Sometimes 2 blocks need to be connected over radio. Very often this is not done properly. It's done over, you know, arbitrary radio links which are unencrypted. So you can break in either in the vicinity via radio, or if stuff is really badly unconfigured, then you can do it over the public internet.
So the companies are managing their power generation infrastructure using the open internet without even a VPN?
No, there was a VPN, but there was an exposed service that shouldn't have been there.
So that one is not encrypted?
No, it had TLS on it, but that's not really counted because that doesn't stop, it doesn't authenticate, right? It just encrypts.
So what's the remedy that you recommend to your client?
There's a whole lot of remedies out there to be done, but yeah, I mean, I mean, the idea is to obviously shut off processes, shut off ports that are not required to start with, you know. And
Do you use open internet to manage?
no, absolutely not. You need to, completely keep stuff off the internet and only telemetry that's necessary, send it out in a secure way, either via data diode or, through a closed tunnel or an SD-WAN of sorts. So number of ways to solve the problem. Yeah, off the top of my head, there's a number of ways that this sort of a thing could be solved. Yeah. Sorry? This took over 3 months, but we were on the road for about 12 days because, the on-site visits were long. We spent a lot of time on each site enumerating every single bit, every single device. Yeah, but overall 3 months because there was a lot of assets to go through, a lot of data to process, and a lot of stuff that we could do back from the office off-site. So yeah, it took about 3 months to complete. Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to ask you several questions. How long did it take to crack the hash password with Fusion language? How long did that take?
It took us. It was not a difficult password, and it was in an existing word list hash table. So it it was a password that existed in one of our word lists.
The dictionary attack.
Yeah, it was a dictionary attack with a pretty big GPU. We've got some pretty big firepower back at home. Yeah, so we can throw pretty much every dictionary at a hash in under 10 minutes or so, depending on the hash type and the mathematical complexity.
So was it necessary to go there physically to do this?
No, we did not do this particular kill chain physically. This was something that was done over the internet. Yeah, so this particular kill chain was not executed physically.
So what was the purpose of physically doing that?
Because here we enumerated one remote vector. When you're inside and when you're looking at it, you'll see a very different picture. So there's different purposes. One is you're looking at the actual real world impact of external attack, and from inside you're actually looking at the real vulnerabilities and the state of affairs on the inside. Yeah.
And then my last question is, only solar power plants?
No, this particular site was solar, but we've done a lot of other different modes, thermal, wind. Yeah.
And how are they different?
Thermal's crazy complicated. Solar has no moving parts, right? It's just photovoltaic cells into inverters. Thermal, you've got like feeders, to get the coal in or whatever you're burning. Then you've got turbines; those have moving parts. Then you've got a whole bunch of other stuff, that these processes need to govern. And there's a lot of more stuff that could go wrong there. The more stuff you have, the more stuff that can go wrong. So yeah, solar is simple, clean. That's why I thought I'd showcase it. Thermal, we have another whole crazy set of stories to tell, which I will save for another day. Yeah. Yes.
Just a question. Since you did both assessments externally and internally, right? So what were the success rates like when you compare between the two?
Define success rate.
Meaning like you managed to get in.
So once you're in, you're already in, right? But when I'm inside, I can enumerate every single possible attack vector to get in. From outside, I may or may not come across those, because you know how it is. It's like auditing a piece of software, black box, or when you have the source code open in front of you. You may not find that needle in a haystack vulnerability. It's a similar situation, when you're looking at things from the inside, you see clearly that, hey, these are all the ways someone can get in, and this is what you need to do to close it off. Yeah, that's the perspective change, I feel, looking at it from the out and the in. Yeah. Yes.
Do you come across any buyers that say, no, we can't touch my production infrastructure?
I don't pick up that at all. We don't pick those lines because if we're not looking at your production network, we're not adding value to your real security posture. You do even in an application, something as simple as a web app, a financial services application, you're testing it on staging. There's so many third-party integrations and other parts of the contextual ecosystem which are not present or mocked. And the attack vectors that could happen through the supply chain are, innumerable and they're left out. So, just doing a tabletop exercise, it's not what we do. There are other players who do it and who probably do it better than us. So we don't pick that up. Yeah. Yes.
Just based on your observations through your work group, how would you rate the security maturity between the OT and IT elements? Like, do you find one is grotesquely unwilling compared to the other, or they're both?
Yeah, I feel that the OT is always on the back foot on this one because mainly because it comes from a different world. You know, the people who work there on site, if you actually go and spend time on an OT site for a couple of weeks, they don't come from a IT background, let alone cybersecurity. They have no clue sometimes on a lot of this stuff. And I know that's changing now. We're doing trainings, and over the last 3 or 4 years, that's been the purpose of a lot of conferences out here and all over the world that we go to. But it's still, I would say, a few years behind the IT domain. And for those reasons, I would say definitely OT is on the back foot on this one. I mean, coupled with a plethora of other challenges, from legacy gear to not being able to update your operating system without changing like 10,000 other devices. There's a whole lot of challenges due to which OT is sort of always on the back foot. Yeah. Yes.
So when you got the list of Modbus ports for all the operations, like how do you know that you wouldn't cause unplanned damage to the system?
That's what, in this scenario, we're lucky it's a solar plant, so you could shoot them off in the night. And, if it crashes, well, it's already down. So it's not a problem. Yeah. But yeah, you don't ever shoot stuff on a process level. So pen testing in an OT environment, you generally stop at Purdue 3.5. You don't want to push systems hard at those 3, 2, 1. The process at the process layer. You don't ever want to do that. Yeah, it's too risky. I've seen those vacuum circuit breakers. We saw a video of that killing a guy because the glass around it shattered, and it's a vacuum with 33,000 volts. So suddenly air fills it, and when air fills a 33,000 volt gap across a small space, it just arcs across and it just annihilates. The guy got vaporized. So you don't play with this stuff. It's dangerous. Yeah. Yes, sir. You had a question. One last.
Just let me know about the cellular service provider. You said you're able to see the internal IP address of one of their clients.
Yeah.
But are they using IPv6, or somehow you managed to go past the router of one of them?
Yeah, misconfigured routing. Yeah, the routing tables were completely out of order. And this is not an isolated case. I've read about so many 5G networks, across Europe and the US, where practitioners have come to security conferences and spoken about this stuff, where, due to misconfigurations, one tenant can route into another tenant. You and me are both tenants of a particular ISP. You access my data, I access yours, stuff like that. It happens, and it's crazy. And I had never seen it until we went on site and we were scanning the network, and like, where the hell is this IP range? These ports don't look like they belong here. And then we realized it was another tenant, so yeah. Yeah, my expression was exactly like yours.
So there is a router in between.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. All right. Yeah, if you'd like to ask me any more questions, or we can take it offline over beers. Thank you so much. Yeah.